Welcome to The Inevitable, a podcast by MotorTrend.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The Inevitable. This is the podcast, the vodcast, where we talk about the future of the car, the future of transportation, the future of mobility, the future of insurance. And we'll get to that in a minute, but before then, Ed has a little message for you.
The Inevitable Vodcast is brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Ariya, inspired by the future, designed for the now. And yes, I'm Ed Lowe. That's Jonny Lieberman. We're here, as always, back from a little bit of a spring break with another episode, and it's a good one. We have our friend and our insurance agent, McKeel Hagerty, which we'll introduce in just a moment.
And we are going to get discounts because of this, right, Ed?
Exactly.
Right.
But let's go to our question of the episode, which is kind of a follow-up to what we talked about on the last episode. It comes from a guy on Instagram whose name is Doug McIntosh, Dodd Mac. And he asked a very long compound question about the similarities between Volkswagen vehicle platforms. And he mentions three of them: MEB, Modular Electric Drive Matrix; PPE, Premium Platform Electric, which is the bigger version, more premium, bigger version of MEB. And then what is to be the next generation for Volkswagen vehicles, the Scalable Systems Platform, SSP. And his story is, his question is kind of interesting. Like, hey, as the differences become more and more superficial between these segments, will VW Group prevent me from putting a Taycan motor and battery into the new VW ID.7 via software code? Will they write code that will stop me from doing some sort of wild powertrain swap if I choose to buy this vehicle? And I answered it. I actually said, hey, why don't you just buy a Taycan, like a off-lease, first gen Taycan. They're at an amazing discount right now. They're still a fantastic drive. In fact, you could argue it's better to drive one now because there's more charging stations than there used to be, and that's the Achilles heel of a Taycan. It's only got like about 200 miles of range because they're great to drive. Why bother?
And if you drive them hard, they have about 70 miles of range. But
right.
Yeah.
Or I suggested to put in a Tesla powertrain if you're going to do anything, because that's the most that's kind of become like the LS swap.
That's the Chevy small block of EVs.
Of EV mods. But I also wanted to defer to Jonny here because I said in the last episode that he's a bit of a VW platform nerd. He likes these modular
all platforms, not just VW platforms.
But platform nerd.
But yeah, long story short is absolutely, you will never be able to do that. They will prevent that. First of all, the Taycan motor won't even be compatible with the MEB. It's so different.
Or SSP, I guess, is the new hotness.
Yeah, no, it won't. But it's like do you remember, Ed? Years ago, a couple AMG motors showed up in the garage at work. Yeah. That one of them I had assembled. One of them they just mailed to us on accident. But so for years, I had a twin turbo V8 AMG motor that I built. Laying around the shop, and I gave it to lots of people trying to get it to work. And it was like, boy, the engine controller was so complicated that you had to have the right gas cap. The gas cap completed some circuit that let the engine turn on. So yeah, it absolutely not. That's going to be the hard part is going to be cracking the software code. And I think, I know with like tuning Teslas, like no one really is able to like extract more power. All the Tesla tuners that I know, we know a bunch of them, they lower the car, they put it on better springs, they put it on better wheels and tires,
right.
They remove weight, but they can't touch the powertrain. It's just locked. And you got to imagine it's going to be just as locked. Now, can somebody crack it? Yeah, maybe. Will it be worth it? I don't know. And the other thing is they'll probably just do an ID.7R that, is the Audi motor type thing. So yeah, I don't, maybe, but the way it stands now, no, because of compatibility. And then once everything is on the same platform, probably also no, just because they don't, just the risk of like, if you're starting to touch those wires that connect to those motors at 380 volts or whatever.
Well, I'll do
know.
you one better too, which is this is also kind of breaking news because it came out like 2 days ago. If you want to do something like reprogram or jump into the code on one of these future Volkswagen EVs, you better learn Chinese because we just found out that they just announced that XPeng, the Chinese EV manufacturer, was going to be the electrical engineering architecture for future Volkswagen product.
Right.
So
you got to imagine they do that in English, though. If you're going to have Germany and China, they're not going to.
Code is code, right?
Code, code is in English. Yeah.
Yep. So
that is some breaking news. Now you had a you made a mistake. I was gonna say you made the Geely comment, but
that's Volvo.
Yeah, that's Volvo. Okay, yeah.
So
but that is big news that Volkswagen's partnering with essentially a Chinese startup.
Yeah,
that's a very successful Chinese startup.
Yeah, one that's. I mean, they've been around for about 10 years.
Oh, is it that? Okay,
but
that's wild.
Future conversation for a future episode. Right now, we want to thank Doug. Thank you, Doug McIntosh, for your question. Swag is on the way. In fact, by the time you see this, hopefully you already have it. We got some great stuff coming your way. Hat, maybe some pens, maybe a book. So if you have a question, please ask us. I've done some analysis. Most of the comments are coming through Instagram. You guys are DMing us or dropping in the comments. That's fine. You can also email us, motortrend@motortrend.com. You can shoot us personal notes. You can drop them in YouTube. I picked up a question from our YouTube comment section. Just send us a question, and I promise you it'll take a little bit of time, but we'll send you something for your efforts. Now let's talk about our guest. So hopefully you're paying attention to this space because you love cars, and if you do love cars and you've been following the enthusiast space, you will know the name Hagerty. So Hagerty is an insurance company that has started to get into arguably every phase of automotive enthusiasm.
I mean, I think what Ed's trying to say is the odds are very good that by the end of the episode, McKeel Hagerty will buy him and I.
Okay, so. Well, we might be working for McKeel by the end of this episode. No, Hagerty is the insurance company for the automotive enthusiasts. They have made a great business of insuring high-end collectible cars, antique cars, high-performance vehicles.
And my junky old 914. So,
I have two cars. I mean, both my Land Cruiser and my 911 are insured by them. They do big events. They've been buying up a lot of the biggest and most historic concours events. Amelia Island.
Yeah, I mean, Radwood, which isn't big or historic, but very popular. They bought that. They got a new auction company, Broad Arrow, which is competing with the big boys in the auction space.
Yes, and we have the CEO. McKeel Hagerty. This is a family business. He is the son of the founders of this family business. He took over in 2000 as co-CEO and then was full-time CEO in 2012. Super interesting background. Car guy, boat guy, went to school out here on the West Coast.
Cyclist, priest. You'll find out a lot about McKeel in this episode.
We're going to talk to McKeel about his company, about what Hagerty is doing, but also about how he sees the world, the future of automotive from both the insurance angle and I think the enthusiast angle. Welcome, McKeel. McKeel Hagerty, thank you so much. What an honor to have you here.
Mr. Hagerty.
Mr. Hagerty. I am Hagerty insured, Jonny.
I pay $300 a year for a car I've never driven. Yep.
Oh, well, then I'm honored.
Amazing.
I'm honored to be here with
or
two
you
fine customers.
Or you owe me $1,500.
Yeah, well, drive
Two
carefully.
ways to look at it.
Drive carefully.
Also, congratulations on Hagerty's 40th anniversary.
Yeah.
Thank you. Big year. And MotorTrend's 75th.
Thank you for supporting MotorTrend in our 75th year.
Yes.
So lots of pats on the back all the way around.
Happy birthdays.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
We can just start there.
Well, I was thinking,
how's it going?
Could we start actually? I had because it's kind of timely. The Aaron Water auction, Aaron Water show. Because you started an auction company a couple years ago, which reminds me of the great Homer Simpson line when all these jean manufacturers looked at Levi's and Jordache and said, "Me too."
Yeah, me too. Let's get after this.
So Broad Arrow and our friends, Zwart and Pat Long and all the people behind Luft Get Cool to have a new show, Aaron Water, and you guys are doing an auction of these insane Porsches.
Yeah, 70 really good cars.
Yeah, just as a way to kind of draw people in initially, how'd that come about? That seems like a good collab.
the whole business was always about the idea of like protecting cars. You guys are insurance customers of ours, but after a lot of decades of doing this and a lot of years, you really become part of the whole ecosystem of the car world. And there's automotive media and there are automotive events and there are all those things that you just naturally go to. You get to know everybody, and in protection and insurance is kind of a lot about the value of cars. And so one of the first things we ever had to do as a business is get really good at understanding the value of cars that are kind of hard to value. There was a lot of subjectivity to it for a long time, a lot of opinion. When I first got into this, it was everybody had an opinion about something was worth. But, the world is all about data now, right? And so one of the first things we did was, okay, let's get into the data side of valuations. Let's really track it. Let's be the kind of a source for that. And it really started the breadcrumbs along the trail of getting into how can we help people buy and sell cars, but in a really trustworthy way, because there are lots of great places, like you said, don't be the other jean manufacturer that goes, that like dies on that beach.
Or there's always room at the top is the other way to look at it, right?
Yeah, well, we just felt there needed to be a better way, and they're great companies. We've been involved around, say, the auction world for a long time, and they're super exciting. You go to them, you watch them on television. They're just a blast. It's intoxicating. But for us, we realized we were getting so large around the insurance and membership side of our world, but we had all this data on people buying and selling cars, adding them to their insurance policies, selling them off, that kind of thing. And it's not a few hundred cars or a few thousand. It's like hundreds of thousands of cars, like much larger than you'd see in everything else. And we thought, wow, we maybe could like serve that space a little differently. And so, but the challenge is a team. You got to have a good team to do that stuff. So there was this new auction company formed, but like total industry veterans. And we were going to kind of partner with them for a while. And we ended up acquiring the business after we went public a couple years ago. And it's super fun.
I didn't realize it was an acquisition.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
but we've added a lot to the team.
Sure.
What we've done is kind of clustered some of their auctions around our events that we now own and run. But this one is not. We've been longtime supporters of Luft and, love Pat and Jeff and like just the team. I mean, it's such a cult super event. I'm a Porsche guy, like to the bone.
Yeah.
And so this is super cool to do an all-Porsche sale. And we did an all-Porsche sale last year, kind of in their first year at Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta. And it's probably the theme of Porsche will come up here a few times in our conversation, but it's just been such a hot brand. And for so long, it was really undervalued. And now, they're really in the mainstream of the car world. So I can't wait to see what happens in Costa Mesa on the 27th.
I mean, there's a roof I keep looking at. So,
Yes.
It's a lot's going to happen apparently, but I'm in a bunch of I don't know how you put it, never-ending text threads with car nerds, and so
Bet you are.
But the Broad Arrow, air and water cars, people are just salivating.
That's something. It's really amazing.
It's a nice group of cars. Yeah.
And that was a good way to talk about basically all of the things that Hagerty your company is doing. I mean, at a high level, right? So, the company was founded in '84. It's now known for insuring collectible vehicles, classic cars, antique cars, enthusiast vehicles. Yeah. But man, you've done so much more just in the last, 5-10 years.
I'm sorry, I'm tripping out that 84 is 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. I had great
hair.
I had great
senior
hair,
moment,
by the way.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, from the media side to all the events that you've really taken over and elevated, Amelia Island, now the Amelia.
Radwood, we're super excited about this year, which that's again really leaning into where's this going, not just where it's been.
Right.
We're really excited.
And
about
I'm going to get the name wrong, but the party at the airport at Pebble, what's that?
Motorlux.
You guys improved it dramatically.
Yeah. And that was all just for me. We just wanted to make it a nice party for me. No, we had been going to that event for years, and that was fun and interesting. But it needed to be, like a proper big luxury party.
But we need more B29s though.
But just the attention to detail that these guys bring. I remember the first year, your wife, soon, she goes, "What'd you think?" And I go, "I was dying of thirst. There was no water."
Oh,
And she was like, and next year, there was so much water.
oh yes. Yeah.
Oh, and the hamburger stand at the exit of the party was a genius moment.
Exactly what
Yeah,
you
yeah.
need.
So-
Yeah.
Again, it's all about me.
Yes.
Yes.
What do you want? It's like, what's going to keep us from
Burgers.
going to get a slothy burger right now? We're going to have them here.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Amazing.
So, but yeah, it was, but that's that to me, because I've been going to that party also for years and years. I was like, wow, this is something actually worthwhile.
And real, like, full credit to Soon on that one, because
Yeah.
she came. I met her in the automotive space, and
Yeah.
she had agencies on the PR and marketing side. and-
Lamborghini. when
I
we-
used
when
to-
I met
yeah.
her,
That's when I met her.
She
Yeah.
ran the Lamborghini thing for 10, 12 years, something
Yep.
like that. But you get to see really good stuff around the world, and you think
Yep.
in different segments of luxury space and different things, how can we bring it to us in the car
Mhm.
world and make it cool? So yeah, Motorlux is really fun.
It is, yeah.
So, amidst all that, including in the last a couple of years, you took Hagerty public via a SPAC. I mean, what else are you doing? I mean, come on, I'm just kidding. How do you have the time to do all this stuff? And what else? What's cooking right now?
Well,
for you?
it's think of your experience at MotorTrend. Think of working with great teams. The only way you get anything done is with great teams. And so I think a big part of our business from the beginning, it was a family company. Started in the 40 years ago in the basement of the house I grew up in.
Wow.
And my parents I was viewed it in the early days, and it was insurance, but it was insurance in the early days just for wooden boats.
Yep.
And cars came a few years after that. But we always just wanted to build great teams of people that you kind of liked working with. And it's weird to think it's only 40 years ago, or my gosh, it's 40 years ago. But back then, insurance as a service wasn't that friendly. Like, it was, everybody had to have it. You had, got to buy it, got to pay for it. But it wasn't like a service-friendly business. It was almost like a tax you had to pay to own a thing. And so we just decided, we were Midwesterners, Northern Michigan. We were going to kind of bring that kind of maybe Midwestern kindness to the process. And it just kind of went through everything. And so what that does, I think people feel it on the other side of a transaction or a service thing. And then you also attract that kind of people to your teams. And, we were talking earlier about the auction team that we were going to need if we wanted to get into a marketplace space. It's all about the team, and it's all about how you want to serve people. And for us, my mother, who just passed away pretty recently, if you asked her, okay, Mom, why did this business work from the beginning? Can you believe how big it is, Mom? First of all, she was 89, and she would say, look, people take good care of their toys, and cars are their toys. And when you work hard to buy something, it's your precious thing. Just think of the simplest thing that the audience of this podcast will, do. Like, if you have a cool car that you're really excited about, you're going to park it in a different place. You're going to take good care of it. You keep it, all the stuff you do, because it's precious. And so that's like the underlying emotion behind everything we do. And so when we think about going into anything new, it's always, okay, can that mindset be effective there? Like, you think of an auction. Okay, well, can we bring protection and trust and kindness and like just doing things right? Will that help there, or is it no? It's too gritty, doesn't matter. It's just about buying and selling. And what we realized is, yeah, it does.
Sure.
People really care. So that's kind of been the model. But not everything has worked. Like, we've tried stuff where we think, oh, we'd be really good there, or we have some capability, or we could get into it easily. But it's like our DNA didn't apply in that space as well. So you just don't keep doing
I think
those
I think
things.
I think you're fundamentally talking about the fact that Hagerty, you are servicing typically a client at the top end of the market, right? You're not, when you talk about things being maybe a little gritty. You wooden boats. The start of this business. This is not a commodity, right? This is not something.
They're really rare.
Yeah,
They're really rare. Well,
but did your parents have an insurance background? Like, did they start an insurance company out of thin air? Like, or was there?
yeah, my dad, I'm fresh out of college. My parents met at Michigan State. My dad, he was kind of a son of Detroit. His father was from Detroit. His grandfather worked for Ford in Detroit. So and you live in Michigan, especially during any of those decades, long before I was there, like, everybody had something to do with the car world.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
you were
Yeah,
one degree of separation from
Right.
it.
Right.
And so it wasn't like they were just cars. They weren't fancy or expensive or whatever. They're just cars, and they were everywhere. And so my dad went in the insurance business in 1956. He was a State Farm insurance agent. It was just an out of college first business.
Okay.
And he was pretty good at it. And then that business kind of grew, and he did another insurance agency thing. But there was a huge recession that hit Michigan in the late 70s. And so he sold that business, and they were kind of they were wandering around a little bit trying to figure out what to do. And my dad always admired some of the classic, we used to call them classic car, antique and classic car insurance businesses, because, they were kind of stable. It was kind of national instead of just Michigan. It was like, it had all these things. And he was a car guy. We had boats. He said, what if we did this for boats, what other people were doing for cars? And it was kind of as simple as that. Mm-hmm. And so it was literally business card size ad in a wooden boat magazine, with a phone number. Call us and we'll help you insure your wooden boat. And they kind of thought, well, maybe this will be kind of a cool retirement business. They were kind of, they were in their 50s. And the thing just exploded. Like, it just went crazy, like in a very short period of time.
Doing boats or
doing
crazy?
Just wooden boats.
Okay,
just wooden boats. Yeah, only. Yeah. Just one thing.
Who was underwriting boats at the time?
Nobody did.
Right.
And so
that's great.
Absolutely nobody. And because everybody thought they were too risky, it's too niche, nobody will know how to repair them. Nobody knows what they're worth, like all of those things. But, we were a wooden boating family because we grew up on a little lake in northern Michigan, but yet for us, like, this is the most precious thing in the family. Not that it was worth a lot, it was precious.
Yeah, right.
You really cared about it. And, everybody learned it. Our boat was called Pipe Dream. We still have it. It's like, everybody learns to drive Pipe Dream. Everybody learns to water ski behind Pipe Dream. Like, Pipe Dream is special.
Right.
And so that's the premise of the insurance that they kind of started. And then all of us, my older sisters and I, we all pitched in. Like, you're just family business. Like, I don't care if your family was in the corner grocery store or whatever. Right. You pitch in. You're going to work on a Saturday morning. You're going to go. For us, it was going to boat shows. All of our wooden boat customers kept coming to us and saying, "Hey, I have cars too. Why don't you insure those?" And so it was sort of one of these, okay, maybe. We were a car family too, but it felt big and kind of intimidating because it's much larger.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of stumbled into it. But at that second round in the 90s, that wasn't just my parents. My parents said, let's have the kids own it equally with us. Right. We're all going to be partners in it. And one sister was an attorney, and she's like, yeah, whatever. I don't want it. But she said, I'll help. And my other sister was in grad school. I was eventually in grad school. So we all just kind of stumbled into it. And but you kind of learn to love things, and then you don't. And the entrepreneurial spirit is you just don't ever give up.
Right.
Yeah.
It was fun. Honestly, it's one of the coolest businesses because insurance is not sexy as a product, but cars are.
Oh, yeah.
They're the best. I mean, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yes. We all love cars.
It was inevitable.
Yeah.
There we go. That we would get into this.
Insurance may not be sexy. Insuring Ferraris could be kind of sexy. Like, you go see Ferraris and stuff.
I mean, no, classic car insurance is, it's you got to have it. And if you can make it kind of a little bit more fun than, say, State Farm, like, it's a kind of a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, we're not shilling too hard here, but we are both customers, and I will say the process is you guys are state of the art. The online stuff, like, you call in, you talk to a real person. Like, I'm like the worst customer because my stuff lapses, and you guys don't bother me too much when it lapses. Then I got to call back, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, totally, just do this." I'm like, "Okay."
I'm the best customer.
We have a whole department just for you.
I know, chasing me down.
Just to chase you down. So
kindly,
I was in a board meeting yesterday talking about who in the world lets their insurance just lapse.
This guy
forget about it. This guy.
So now I know. I think mine's auto pay, but again, it's for a car that's never moved. So for you, it's great.
Send us the check, your ignition keys, and everybody's happy.
I mean, you might as well have them. They do me no good.
But you touched on it briefly about where your sisters were at, and we're good. This one we're going to run out of time before we run out of things to talk about.
Sure.
I looked at. You have a Wikipedia. Hagerty and McKeel both have a Wikipedia page, and they're both reasonably well filled out. You were gonna be a priest, and you got a master's in philosophy and Russian Orthodox theology from St. Vladimir's in Yonkers.
It is in Yonkers. We used to call it Crestwood. It sounds better.
My first question is, do you speak Russian? Da?
No.
Okay,
no. You learned a lot you know, just conversational because of the student body there. That was a pretty sizable Eastern European community in New York.
Okay.
And so this seminary popped up like it was between the world wars. And it was kind of like the center of, believe it or not, Russian Orthodox, like theological studies and thoughts. So everybody from all over the world would want to come study at this place.
Sure. You couldn't do it in Russia.
Well, yeah, not and have heat.
Not at the time. Not at the time.
Yes.
It was.
And so, I went to Pepperdine in LA, you know, had a great experience, studied philosophy and English lit, loved it, great experience. And I thought, well, I want to be a professor. That was my dream. Right. Never going into this family insurance business thing ever. That was my thinking. And I had a professor who said, well, you probably want to get your PhD, but you probably need to work on your languages. So why don't you go to seminary? And he was Russian Orthodox. I'm like, well, okay, sure. Why not? I'll go. And it was almost like on that kind of whim. And really fell in love with it because it wasn't so much that, you kind of get pulled into the priesthood track. It was super international. I mean, there were just the languages and all of this kind of global thinking that I had never been exposed to. And you learn a lot, and you learn a lot of languages, and you do a lot of interesting things.
Yeah.
So
I have a small background.
Yeah.
One of my majors was like comparative religions.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I had my favorite professor, or not my favorite, but one of them was a priest, and and it was fascinating, the stuff we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
How did you end up at, before that, how did you end up at Pepperdine?
As far away from northern Michigan as I could get, in the sunshine.
For those of you who don't know,
and Hawaii was not an option, I was told. Yes.
Right.
Pepperdine is in Malibu.
Yes. My dad was a professor at Pepperdine.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's on the water. It's a beautiful campus.
Oh, yeah. Every time I drive by it now, I'm like, oh, my gosh. I don't think I had enough fun.
It's not Russian Orthodox. We should
that's
point out.
It's not. Decidedly not.
It has a different.
It's an evangelical Church of Christ.
There's
school.
But there's a delicate question about how do you go from fun and sun in California to
Yonkers
priesthood, potential priesthood, right? Like
it's a flight. It's just one flight.
All right, we'll leave it there.
Too much sun.
No, honestly, look, I wanted to do. I always had this thing. Like, I wanted to do something really hard. Like super challenging, like so far out of my comfort zone, and that is about as far. Not only different than the way I was kind of raised, different than Pepperdine, but like do something super fun and challenging, and it was really challenging and amazing. So,
all right,
I still keep doing goofy stuff like that.
So let's bring it back to some of these interesting things that Hagerty is doing. We mentioned some of the events, the Radwood, the Amelia. This predates all of that. This is I think, arguably one of the most important, longest will be perhaps your legacy, which is the National Historic Vehicle Registry. Yeah. Can you talk about that? Why? First of all, why? Like, why do this? Where does this idea come from? And then what is it about?
Well,
or what is it about? Then
we were talking earlier. Okay, insurance, car values, all that kind of stuff, and auctions, like auctions on television, and what blows people away if their first exposure to kind of cool cars is watching an auction on television. They just think all the money, and it's just like money. But like everybody's just like they see dollars,
$300,000 Chevelles,
and that's true, and it's exciting, but. I also grew up in a place where I love the history of cars, and I love their cultural value, not just their economic value. And I also knew, like, we had a few cars in the family that were, like, really kind of cool or important historically, but they weren't worth that much necessarily. They would never sell for a lot at an auction. And that story goes all over the place. And so I became aware of there's a group called FIVA in Europe, which is called, I'm going to butcher the French. So it's Fédération Internationale Véhicule Ancien. So it's the International Federation of Historic Vehicles. It's in like 100 countries. But their stated purpose is to preserve historic cars on tomorrow's roads. And I just loved the translation into English, which is yesterday's cars, tomorrow's roads. And I'm like, wow, you're already starting to hear this chatter that, maybe cool old cars are going to be legislated off the roads. And so here's this international group, but with no representation in the U.S. And so I got to know these people, started traveling internationally, getting to know them. And I thought we should do this in the U.S. We should figure it out. It'll be a kind of a hard sell. It's going to be a really long ball, like long pull. And so we started the kind of FIVA local group in the U.S. to represent them. And try to figure out, okay, so what of those kind of FIVA things will work in the U.S. and we're looking around. Okay, well, what are the historic things that anybody cares about at all in the U.S.? And have you ever passed one of those historic buildings that has a plate or the thing on it, historic home or historic building, and it's on the National Register of Historic Places?
Yep.
And I was like, what is that? And we started realizing it's like, well, that whole regime of those buildings could have technically also applied to cars or vehicles, but never had been done. And so we kind of started researching, like, well, it kind of works in the U.S. So what if we just started picking truly great cars, and we'll start going through this process of putting them in the National Historic Vehicle. We created this Historic Vehicle Register, but like recognized by the Library of Congress. There's this
Department of Interior.
Department of Interior. It's a really wild process to get through. You have to have even if you take an existing car and say we're going to put it through this process, you have to have engineering drawings made of it. You have to have all these special. They have to be photographed in a certain way. And then it's kind of accepted, and now it's a sort of permanent part of the historic record of the United States.
Of the Library of Congress. Those are mandated by the Department of Interior or the Library of Congress?
Well, it's the way it works, and then they're permanently on display as part of not the car, but the records and everything. You put the submission together.
And is this real quick? Is this an individual car, or like you're talking about a model line? Like
no, it's a car, an individual car. And I can't remember with 32 or 33
I looked at the list.
I sent
you
34
in the notes.
34, I guess. So so what we did was just try to pick cars that we thought would tell a story. And then the other kind of cool thing about it is we started realizing, well, the school trip for school kids in the U.S. is to go to D.C., right? You go to D.C., you see the monuments, you go to the Smithsonian. But what we also found out is you are not legally allowed to display cars on the National Mall in Washington. And the reason is, I'm sure it's because somebody broke a rule or something there, or tried to do a race, or
did a
did a burnout. But we realized is for like an historic museum like display, you could. So we had this big glass box built. We did we'd put a car in the register, and every year for a week we put it out there, and we put signs out displaying it, and we just let it be like part of the story of school kids going to Washington. And my view is it's just one of the many dimensions of cars that we just need to celebrate a little bit. And honestly, I'm honored you'd said maybe it'll be my legacy. I hope so, because I love all the values and all the media and all the events, but we do need to make sure that we preserve these forever.
But so this was like out of your brain as like a Hagerty side hustle, or just something like, I mean, there's no money in it. Like this, in fact, it's the other way, right? This was just something that you thought that should be done based on what FIVA
must be done.
Okay, then I got to go into this and needle you on this weird thing that I saw, which is, so if you don't know what we're talking about, just Google National Historic Vehicle Registry. It's actually, you can find it at driversfoundation.org/register. And there'll be all these cars. They're great. Side profile, you got a Jeep, you got a Mustang, you got a Plymouth Voyager minivan, you got a Buick Y-Job, you got the Hero Hata Hot Rod, you got a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, you got a Model T. You got Lamborghinis and Maseratis. Why aren't they just American cars? If FIVA, I assume, is only doing pinking their French cars, or they do?
It's all over the world.
Global,
all over the world. Yeah, global cars.
But they didn't have Was it like a snub to those Americans?
No, they probably had
it's
lots
just
of American
for
cars.
whatever reason, there was never typically the way FIVA enters a new country is they have a club that sponsors them, and there wasn't a club that ever thought it was important to sponsor that kind of activity.
AAA didn't think this was.
So we kind of had to create the club in a way. We kind of hung it off of the side of our own Hagerty Drivers Club. And it's, again, I thought it had to be done. And the technical way to do it required a lot of, even for FIVA, I had to have them bend a few rules to get us to do it. And then pretty instantly when we started making our membership aware of it, it became kind of one of the largest FIVA groups in the world.
America does everything bigger.
And but no, we've been pretty careful to try to mix it up every year. We want, for one thing, it's sitting in the box, the glass box, and we want to make sure that somebody wants to walk up and really look at it. So it's not that we couldn't do every air-cooled Franklin Nothing, no offense to anybody out there who loves air-cooled
Oh,
Franklins.
now you've done it.
But,
But a '79 Lamborghini Countach with the wing on the nose is going to get a lot of kids to stop by.
Exactly. So it's still a kind of a show, right? It's history, but it also has to be a show. That's why one of the Shelby Daytona coupes, I think, was #1, maybe. And that was the very first one. And we did Amelia Earhart's Cord, just because you kind of get a two-for there because you get a Cord and
Hudson
you get Amelia
Hornet,
Earhart, Hudson Hornet. Yeah.
But also, I mean, look, I mean, like right now, over at the Peterson, they got 75 years of Porsche in California, and it's Ferrari passenger cars, #1 markets here, Lamborghini #1 markets here. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Well, and I said I grew up in Michigan in a Ford family, and we had Fords and Porsches, so we were kind of an anomaly, as a collecting family. But I remember coming to school out here in the 80s, and my family did travel a little bit, but it was just still so shocking to come to Los Angeles.
Hondas.
Yeah. It's like everybody is in a Honda Civic.
Toyota.
Everybody's in a Honda Civic. And then you come to
what?
Beverly Hills, and I remember seeing cars that I'd only read about in a MotorTrend.
Yeah.
And they're just one after another, after another, after another. It's such an astonishing car market.
But back when you came out, Pepperdine, Nissan, Honda, Toyota, Mazda, all headquartered here. Hyundai put their headquarters here. There's a reason they were all here.
Yeah, golf. Golf is the reason. The executives all love to play golf and sushi.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, we have good sushi.
Okay. So this is awesome. We're talking about everything you guys have done, have been doing, and it's now time to get into the future, because this is ostensibly a podcast about where
the inevitable.
the inevitable, where the future of cars is going.
Future of transportation.
Yeah.
Let me
Does it involve cars?
Let's talk about that. So you're in the insurance business.
Yeah.
Future of cars seems pretty clear. It's how far out, I think, is the question. But autonomous is supposed to be coming. There's a school of thought that says, "Hey, man, in an autonomous world, if everything is either rideshare or it's hailed on your mobile device, car ownership either goes away, or certainly there'll be some kind of impact to insurance if everybody, actually, whether or not you're planning on, have an autonomous vehicle program." Volvo's been pretty clear about wanting, zero fatalities, mission zero crash. As somebody in the business, how does it make you feel? Is there no insurance business in the future if everything drives itself and is like 100% safe or whatever?
Well, kind of the first part of your question, it was when, and I think there's it is probably inevitable that these it's a little tight one. That there's going to be all this. Like, cars are first going to be electric, then they're going to be a lot more driver aids. It'll become more like autonomous driving. I think the big thing is the timing a little bit is going to be driven by regulation, probably, and the technology. I think everybody's realizing is in reality probably a little harder than.
Although I got to tell you, I was talking to someone at Kia, and I said, "So when is this level 4 that you're talking? 2028?"
Yeah.
I go, "Really?" They go, 2028.
Yeah,
and
probably.
They seem to do what they say, So
of course, well,
yeah.
The question is where, and I think what I've always wondered is sort of where. I live in a pretty rural place in northern Michigan that has horrific weather and dark roads, with the lines seem to get faded off, snow. And not saying that maybe an autonomous machine could drive better than I can, than the way I learned to grow up in the wintertime, but it's the question to me has always been, okay, before COVID, and I do a lot of speaking around the world, and I'm often asked to talk about trends. And I would always said, before COVID, the #1 trend on the planet is rapid urbanization. People moving to cities, out of the country, out of rural areas. Farming doesn't employ a lot of people. It's all mechanized, all that kind of thing. And then COVID, strangely, for that year and a half or so, kind of reversed it. Like, people were moving out of New York back to Connecticut and all those kind of places, because wow, you get a little air around you. It's nice to be in a green space. You can walk. You can do all that stuff. Not that you can't in New York, or although nobody.
Yeah, but does
everybody still not walk in LA?
No one walks in LA.
Okay, we've established.
But it was a trend, right?
It was a trend.
Yeah.
And so when you think of New York, like, do you really want to drive in Manhattan? I mean, I've done it. We've probably all done it. Like,
I enjoy it, but I'm weird. Yes.
Well,
that's definitely
speed limit's 25 miles an hour.
Right, and it's just like it's much
Speed
more
limit.
pleasant to be driven by someone or something else. So I don't really care what's driving me in New York, but I do care what's driving me up Highway 1.
Right.
And I really care what's driving on, Angeles Crest. I care what's I like Pikes Peak. I don't want to ride up Pikes Peak in the back of a Vomit Comet. I want to have my hands on the wheel of something, and whether that's an electric car or an internal combustion car or steam powered car, I don't really care. Some roads, some places, I think people will want to drive for the pleasure of it, and that's what we're trying to preserve.
Yeah.
Does that make that world smaller? Maybe. And I'm not terribly bothered by it. What I actually hope is it relieves some congestion and makes for those who want to drive, there's a little bit more room. But we created this purpose out of all of this for our business, our purpose is to save driving and fuel car culture. Car culture is the events and media and all those things like we all love to do. And what I hope is that we can still have room for yesterday's vehicles on tomorrow's roads. And I also think for the brand new things and the future cars that are actually fun to drive and look good, I hope we can still drive them too.
We did a podcast recently, and it spooked me. We had this guest from Gensler, the big architecture firm, and he just had a throwaway comment, but he said, if it turns out that autonomous cars are just a lot safer than human-driven cars, maybe driving will be seen the way we look at smoking today. Everybody smoked 40 years ago, Nope. Now it's crazy to smoke. And
you drove. My kids were out on the roads.
My kids were on the street,
how
and you
dare
were
you
driving your 5,000 horsepower, whatever.
So, well, I was thinking
it really spooked me.
Every time an architectural firm in particular talks about the future of cities, and they talk about autonomous vehicles and all the things that are going to happen, the one thing that I'm always they have in their renderings is a lot of bicycles, and a lot of pedestrians. And so regardless of what the technology is of driving, you're going to have a lot of people out there. I mean, safety's always been a factor, and safety's never been perfect. But, zero anything is tricky.
Yeah, like I said, that was the one kind of comment where I left and I was like, oh boy, that's.
I think
I think for vintage like true vintage cars,
I
think, I've often thought when you talk about things like why do the National Historic Vehicle Register, I've often thought that we should probably align our kind of drivers more with the cycling world than we're not trying to save commuting. We're trying to save driving.
Right.
And I think it's pretty different,
And look, I've long said if level 4 autonomy could happen, in other words, like yesterday, I had to go from my house. I had to go 8 miles away. It took me 90 some minutes. It was like I suddenly hated LA.
Mind-numbing, yes.
Yeah, should have walked totally. But okay, so if there's and I have my little sporty thing out there. Sure. If there's a way to say just drive me there, and then hey, I'm on Angeles Crest. Now I get to drive. That's the best. Or I can go out and have some wine. You know what I mean? And take me home safely. I don't want to hurt anybody or myself.
Sounds great,
right? That's kind of the best of both.
Sounds great, But I also think about the beginnings of some of this. Still, you want cars to be attractive. Yeah. I mean, there's still, I think, a performance aspect to it. There's the emotional piece. I have a Taycan. I've had a Taycan Turbo S for a couple years. It's just because I've been a Porsche guy, first car. It's like the latest car for me. And the thing is just like this weapons grade machine. It's just unbelievable. It's heavy, I will say. It did kind of sink through my drivay, but
did it?
It did. It was hot.
Oh wait, you got to own pickup trucks and stuff that are heavier. It's not.
We do, but it was wild. It was just a hot day. I think.
Okay, because it's only about 5,000 pounds.
But it is remarkably. It's a remarkably great car. Yeah. But I also think it looks good.
It does.
And at least in our little town, it gets a lot of views.
Right. I am struck by how I was going to say, if anybody is going to be, I think Hagerty has the chance of being like the last insurance company standing based on your position in the marketplace, right? Like you're not an Allstate or a State Farm trying to insure every person out there on the road. You have this very unique position at the top where a lot of these cars are super collectible. They're very valuable, and these will be vehicles you'd want to own and keep for a long time. And to your credit, preserve the ability to drive them, which is a sort of a follow-up question. Your efforts so far are very honorable. Are you looking to do any kind of if things in 5 years, if it is as Jonny says, hey, autonomous arrives in full force in 2028?
That's what the guy at Kia told me.
Are you going to be? Is there
level
like
4? Level 4,
Is-
let's be clear.
Is there a lobbying effort? You're gonna, there was a human, your buddy did a human drive,
Alex Roy, yeah,
did a
the-
human
Alex,
driving
yeah.
coalition. Is
Yeah.
there some universe where you feel like you'd have to get in front of Congress and testify?
Inevitable.
Thank you for the right of humans to drive.
It's
Although-
inevitable, it
Although
really is.
I just say, like my friend ACP, he's got a model
Andrew Comrie Picard, former rally driver.
1919 Model T that he drives around LA.
That's cool.
Nobody cares. You know what I mean? The idea of like the government taking existing car, they can prevent the sale of new products, but like going and taking an American car, I just don't see that as
Well,
inevitable.
I mean, I'm
Right?
56. I think it's
Yeah.
long beyond my
Yeah.
time horizon, but I want to have the next gen be ready for it. I mean, the big thing is I've also kind of been we talked about my seminary background. I've also studied a lot of leadership, and you think about a lot of organizations. The only thing I can tell you, if anybody wants to see these on the roads generations from now, it's not going to happen on its own. It's going to take like
Get out
real
in
effort.
front of it.
And it's, I also knew we were going to have to build a business successful enough that I could help fund some of these efforts. Like you can't, we've done a lot of nonprofits. We started the Historic Vehicle Association. We had the Collectors Foundation. We now have the Hagerty Drivers Foundation. It's really hard to raise money around the car space for these types of things. So I realized like, we just got to build a business that can help fund it. And then hopefully people kind of believe in it and they throw their hat in the ring, but we're going to do it anyway. And because it's expensive to do some, you talk about, we don't do lobbying now, but I can envision, whether we do it directly or we, help fund or partner with somebody to do it, it's
It happened.
you
You're going to set a record here.
I know.
First
hang
of
on.
all,
Change,
but it's genius, by the way, if you think about it, because now what you're saying is you'll eventually probably have to start wooing some politicians. You have all the events to do it at. Like this is this is great.
Come to Amelia.
Come to Amelia. We could do a $500 a plate dinner.
That's
in
right. You guys
support
are
of-
figuring it out.
Yes,
Hey,
the
okay,
master
that's what I
plan.
wanted to get back
gotta
to.
be
This.
fun.
So
It's gotta be
Amelia and auctions and Pebble and all this. 40 years from now, is there going to be an EV
40?
on the lawn?
100.
Well, hang on. 40 years,
Okay.
Because we go back 40
All
years,
right, all right,
84,
all right, all right.
Well, there's probably
So-
already been an EV on the lawn. It was probably a Detroit Electric, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
modern
fair.
EV, but very
Something
well,
modern
very
EV.
well said. Modern
Something
EV.
with a lot of electronics. in it.
EV1.
Do you guys
Yeah, EV1.
do you guys look that far in the future? Do you? Or is
Yeah, I think you got to have that stuff. And, I think the question is, are they attractive? Did people like them? Did they have other qualities to them? I think it's like some of the early hybrids, and let's just we'll be brand agnostic,
Yeah, no,
right?
it's,
I remember having a dinner maybe with you or a number of automotive journalists, and when we do a dinner with automotive journalists, I like asking the questions, and I was asking why. Okay, I just got to say it.
Yeah.
Why does so many journalists not write ravingly about the early Toyota Priuses?
yeah.
Even though, like, clearly it was like that beginning of
Yeah.
people, people who were super environmentally conscious, wanting to vote with their checkbook, buy a car that they felt they were doing the right thing with, which I totally agree and totally honor. But journalists didn't like it, and I'm convinced it's because, well, it wasn't really built for them.
Yes.
Right? They weren't.
100%.
I think the design was challenging, performance was fine or whatever, but it just was like not built for journalists because it didn't like get your blood going. It got your head and your heart maybe going if you were that kind of buyer. And so my view is just make them look a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
Can I say a hell of a lot
Yeah,
better?
Yeah,
here?
you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like my Taycan. It's a Porsche. Drives like a car.
Misha
wickedly fast.
Misha Bokert, I always butcher
Yeah.
his name, but he's a
Bokert,
head designer at Lamborghini. But he drew that. He designed the Taycan.
Oh,
back
yeah,
when he was a
for
Porsche.
sure.
Like he's pretty good.
Oh man, I judged with him at Pebble List.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, he did a couple drawings
Oh,
for me
he's
on
amazing.
my judging sheet that I have framed in my office.
He's
it's just the
amazing.
part of the car world I love.
I had
Yes.
real quick. Here in Beverly Hills, I was going to drive it was a prototype of a hybrid Panamera, and they forgot that America used different electricity than Germany. So for 6 hours, German engineers were trying to charge the thing.
Oh jeez.
So Misha, just to entertain me, started like making drawings
Right.
for me. I still have them, and they're framed.
Well,
and they're amazing.
As a judge at Pebble, you're not allowed to take pictures. They tell you like, wait until you're done judging, then go take pictures. He's like, but I can draw them, right? And he drew a picture of every car we judged, all on his judging sheet. He said, oh, you want that? And he just signed it over to me. I'm like, oh,
That's amazing.
the talent.
What also is amazing though. It's interesting that you were able to notice the like Prius bias of journalists, because I remember, and I'll just shout out to our friends at Car and Driver, but back in about 20 years ago, you'd open the magazine and there was Chubba, Prius sucks, and there was there was Brock Yates, and like Prius is the devil, and there was Bedard. No, Bedard. Bedard's mathematically proving that Priuses were worse than for the environment than a fleet of Hummers. And I'm like, this. But now everyone's like feels that way about EVs, and all these car enthusiasts are like hybrids. Everyone's got to be. We need hybrids.
Yes.
And so it's funny how in 20 years that can like shift, and it's funny that you were seeing that back then.
I remember it. I just thought, okay, why do you hate? What do you hate about them?
Well, not everybody. I mean,
I hated them.
MotorTrend picked Prius Car of the Year in its second generation. And
that doesn't mean we liked it. That just means it met our criteria.
We at least had some wonks like Frank and Kim Reynolds who appreciated the engineering.
Again, everything. My problem with previous Priuses was every single thing about the car was sacrificed on the altar of efficiency. They forgot to make it look good and handle good and be nice to sit
on the
in.
National Historic Vehicle Registry, we have a minivan.
Yeah.
One of the first ones, because it was an importantly historic car. There probably should be a Prius. There should be an EV1. We got to get a few years out, because right now we can only do one a year. Maybe we could do 2 or 3.
I don't think EV1, but Model S. I'd throw a Model S.
Oh, Model S, because obviously I think that was in my mind, was the first one, like super attractive, like just ticked so many boxes.
Great to drive, look great, cool.
Yeah.
And 100 miles per gallon MPG. It was twice as efficient.
And satisfied that conscience.
So you do see a moment in the future where there'll be a Tesla class on the lawn at Pebble Beach.
Plaid class, the plaid.
Well, look, the Peterson. I've been involved with the Peterson for a long time. We have the Hagerty Vault over there on the board. We did the Tesla display of all the different products that Elon Musk has been involved with, but plus all of the cars, all that. That was just an incredible display.
Popular
to look at.
Because I go to the Peterson probably once a month, and that was especially with the Roadster prototype. Like people going crazy for that thing.
Oh yeah. Well, we have we've had a kind of one of our events. We have Lucid as a sponsor, and gotten to know that team and drive a couple of those cars, and it's just okay. Again, like just say. Yeah. Kind of lead people forward. Like this is what's possible.
I spoke at one of those. I spoke at a Lucid Hagerty Peterson.
Yeah,
it was fun.
So do you? I want to stay on this topic a little bit. Do you have? Let's go Elon first. Do you have a opinion on Cybertruck? Are you getting one? I can read your expression.
No.
Cybertruck class.
Well, look. I mean, by the way, I'm a sci-fi person. I live a lot of my time thinking about the future. It doesn't move me that much. Huh. No. I mean, like I didn't have that moment like when everybody talked. Maybe all of us are too young to imagine what the Countach must have looked, how different or whatever. Like just something so outrageous that you're like, wowzers.
I talked to Valentino Balboni, and I said, what was it like the first time you saw the Countach? And he was just, oh, look, a spaceship.
It's a spaceship.
Yeah.
Yes, we love Valentino.
Yeah.
So no, and it's primarily that you don't like the way it looks. Or you're not?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I dislike it. It's just I can't quite wrap my head around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you just going to call out cars and get?
No. I'm just I'm curious.
I like that. This would be more fun. Actually.
Yes.
Well, I'm curious because prior to us hitting
left
on the next question is
that green roof at Motorlux 2 years ago. The SCR.
Yes. Is that right or left? I don't know.
The next, because we talked about Elon before we hit record on this thing. Just your thoughts on Tesla in this moment or their impact. I mean, do you we agree Model S is a significant vehicle. Cybertruck is not to your liking. Anything else?
Well, I mean, look, the company to maybe not, and it felt a little shaky to some people at the beginning, but it's an astonishing success. I mean, and I hope it really is successful. I think it challenged a lot of orthodoxies in the car world.
Remember Tucker? You can't do a new car company.
That's right. Tucker. That's right. I mean, just raise the level. Maybe. I think the cars are great. I worry about some of the early tests of. I mean, again, you think about me. My core business is insurance. I think maybe some of the early attempts at autonomous driving with the systems early on was a little reckless by modern standards. I mean, because by the way, we're the types of companies that end up having to pay for it in the end. But beautiful cars, I think if they keep refreshing the model line, why not? It's great.
Okay.
Awesome. I think I almost got run down by 2 or 3 of them walking in here today. They're just is it like every other car?
Oh, yeah.
It's every other car.
Yeah.
It's Model Y.
Because like we were talking when I was in college, it was Honda Civics.
We had Franz in here. That was the first thing I said to him was, do you get sick of seeing Model Ys?
Yeah.
He's
White,
like, oh,
white,
no,
Model
white,
Ys.
black, or silver Model Y.
Oh no, never. We love.
Well, kudos to them. Incredible.
Right?
Okay.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a related question because you brought it up that you are again you have to be mindful of not just the cars but the people behind the wheel and their behavior. I was just thinking about this. I have a 3-year-old son and we drive around all the time, and I'm just noticing that everybody is on their phone when they're driving. They are not. Nobody is paying any goddamn attention these days. What's your position? Are you like, sweet?
Yeah, awesome. What neighborhood do you live in?
Yeah. Cha-ching. No, I mean, surely this is concerning. You have kids of your own. But you're also in the business in this way.
And I'm also a cyclist, so like I ride a lot less than I used to. I mean, I was a 3,000 to 5,000 mile a year cyclist in Michigan, and I don't anymore because I'm just worried about getting run down
That bad
by somebody
and because of phones.
because of phones.
Because of Instagram.
Wow. Yeah. Hey,
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on your mind too. Got it.
It does. It worries me, and that's where you hope, Siri and all the stuff that makes people able to talk to their phone rather than being on it. You hope that works somehow. But,
or level 4 autonomy where the car just
Or
drives you around.
honestly,
sit on your laptop.
I was just thinking about this on the way up that the kind folks at General Motors do not get enough credit about how forward thinking they were. You remember when you're like, I know you're going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Remember
Where is this
it was
going?
2 generations ago in the GMT, I think 800 platform, the pickup trucks, Tahoe and Suburban, they put this cubby behind the screen. You hit a button.
That's right.
The cubby would come up,
And
and
lock
there was
your
a
phone.
port in there to
Yeah.
charge, and you put your phone there, and it comes down, and you cannot access it when you're driving. And like
Clever.
that was so far ahead of its time because back then nobody was that bad. Now everybody's that bad, and you're like, I was like, GM, you guys.
do you look at your weekly screen time report? It's the most
Don't-
depressing.
don't- yeah.
No. My daughter's though.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of an out there. Screen time is inclusive of time text messaging, and if you are mirroring your phone to your laptop and you're accessing it there too, so it's a little bit of a fudge.
Okay.
But
I consider text messaging screen time. I mean, the amount of text messages I send a day is like.
Does it sound like he's
billions.
trying to justify something? I
know.
Maybe trying to
He's
justify
projecting a
something.
little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not that bad.
all right, let's get back to EVs.
Yes.
You mentioned Lucid. Anybody else you like catch your attention?
I mean, I think, and I have a real hope. I just think I love the churn kind of that can happen when you get innovation. Obviously, Tesla led the way. I like Lucid. I like the Rivians. I mean, I think what's interesting for the real car nuts here is, to see what's happening at the upper end of the performance side of the car market. It's just so exciting.
I mean,
it's just
you heard about
amazing.
the new Taycan, the Turbo GT.
Yes.
I was there at Laguna Seca.
Oh.
And the Plaid had a lap that was like a minute 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to whoever before they ran, and they go, "Yeah, that's not our real target. Our real target's the GT2 RS." And I'm just like, "Well, I was there when Randy set that record.
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard record to beats it in the slow car that he didn't like driving, and then gets in the one he liked. And he did the Nürburgring lap with Lars Kern, and beats GT2 RS and is 2/10. Now, yes, they repaved Laguna. Maybe it's a little quicker, blah blah. But 2/10 behind a Senna.
Yeah,
2/10 of a second.
Right.
It's a 5,000-pound sedan.
Yes.
That's no back seats, but the door's still. It's like
Incredible.
This is Porsche's first EV. Yes, they refreshed it, but mechanically, it's the same parts. Wait till their second EV.
Oh, yeah. And I understand the hybrid 911 is 2025.
We'll see it
model
this
year.
summer.
I mean, hopefully,
we'll see it this summer.
you
Yeah,
guys probably know more than I do.
992.2, as we say.
I think that's a pretty cool. And I've had a 911 since I was 13 years old. So
Really?
I have a 67S that I paid $500 for when I was 13.
I saw that car.
and you
somewhere,
restored it, and that is the year you were born. Is that Porsche?
67,
Is
yeah.
from the
yeah,
year you were born?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it's that's whenever people say, "What's your favorite car?" It's like the only real question is, "What's your second favorite?" For me, because
Right.
that one
Yeah,
will
yeah.
that one will follow me in my funeral procession.
Okay. Well, here's what I like. Here's what I like. If
I like that. That's good.
if you're on YouTube and you're watching this, and it's unlikely because most of our YouTube audience loves the hot rod and the internal combustion side of our programming. You'll note though that McKeel, first of all, owns a lot of cars, owns a lot of internal combustion cars, has driven done all the concours and done all these events with cars that belch beautiful plumes of smoke out the back, but also stated that he appreciates the performance at the top end that is delivered by the latest technology. And that's the part that drives me nuts when I encounter the comments on Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube about, oh, the CVs are terrible. And I don't understand how you cannot be a fan of what's going on in the broader automotive industry right now, from the number of startups, the number of crazy, I mean, we got a Vietnamese company, VinFast, selling some wackadoodle SUVs
Yeah,
here.
for like 20, 30, 40 more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Fisker.
Wow,
Are
yeah.
Sorry,
they,
Fisker.
are they, we got a helicopter flying over their head? Holy moly.
Yeah.
But we got all of these crazy vehicles from brands that are essentially startups you've never heard of. And this has never before been seen except
Oh no! Yeah,
actually
yeah.
the 1900s.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
When
1906.
before General Motors, kind of bought everybody out. But this is what a great time to be alive if you love cars. Now,
Yeah,
if your definition of cars includes all these new technologies, that's all I'll say.
I just think, look, I know a thing or two about like holy wars. That's not a holy war worth arguing over. It's not a holy. It's not. It's not even a real distinction.
Right.
Because in my mind, look, I have muscle cars. I have a lot of fast cars. I've driven some crazy fast cars. For the novice, what makes them fun? Torque.
Yeah.
And what can possibly deliver more torque faster than electric motors?
Nothing. Yeah, it
You
turns
can't.
out.
It's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
super
yeah.
fun. I think it gives a lot of pleasure to people, and who cares?
And
Celebrate it.
there's a whole generation.
But my point is, if you want to be fussy, celebrate the ones that are good looking, or the ones that are blue, or the ones that are
the good EVs.
whatever. Yeah, the good EVs.
good
Just like
EVs.
say, then I like that one, and I don't like this one. But like the kind of holy war arguments, and I get a lot of that because I've been very agnostic about this from the beginning, which is like, what are you all arguing about? Because there were electric cars, there were steam cars, there were diesel cars, there were
I
cars.
get that with people. I go. You really need you're gonna die on the hill that the Rav4 needs to remain internal combustion. That's really that's most cars.
Well, like them, love them, and insure them with us someday.
Yes.
You might have to hold on for a while.
Wow,
You might
very
have to
very
hold on
well
to
done.
it.
That was a callback. I like that. That was good.
So among what was the first EV you ever got behind the wheel of?
It was one. First, it was one of the early Tesla Roadsters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody, in
Same.
fact, I can't remember. It was one of those demonstration experiences, and you're just like, it was just unimaginable. It was
Okay.
just incredible.
Okay.
So
And then first one you purchased?
the Taycan.
Taycan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I figured if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go to the brand nearest my heart.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then where do you see yourself in the next, you and the business in the next few years? As we are very much looking at not just EVs, but the software defined vehicles, vehicles that are going to have, I keep going back to this iPhone moment. It wasn't just that the iPhone lost the keyboard and had an all glass screen. It was like the App Store, right? And then from the App Store, you got Uber and Lyft, and some random guy in Times Square is going to pick you up in his personal car and take you to the airport. All this is totally fine.
Don't worry. What could go wrong? Don't
go
talk to
wrong?
strangers.
Right.
Yes.
This stuff is
Pay them money, then talk to them.
this is now coming to the car supposedly in a big way, and there's going to be some game-changing technology, and and because you're a business person, some monetization capabilities. There's subscription models for features within the car. Like, is any of this stuff? Is there like a Hagerty special ops team working on what can we do?
Yes, I met 3 of these new guys we have working for us yesterday who all work for alphabet agencies, and they're really smart. Yeah, we're working. I was like, wow, you're like 12.
Right.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But you're really smart. Thanks for being here. Well, like I got to say, like one area it's my next area of concern. We talk about the Historic Vehicle Register trying to honor things for their historic value. Another piece of FIVA that I've always been interested in is that preserving skills and trades to repair and restore cars. So I'll get back to your question about monetization and software. Is I remember when I first learned from Jay Leno in 1999, I think it was 98 or 99, about McPherson College in Kansas. And so I've been on the advisory board since like 2000. And, for people who don't know, it was the first college in the United States with a 4-year automotive restoration degree. So you got like a bachelor degree and learned to restore cars at the same time. And when we first started, when I learned from Leno, it's like, I think there were like 19 students in the program, and now it's like 140, and they're getting, kids choosing. I was talking to the president, Dr. Schneider. He said they're getting kids choosing McPherson over going to MIT because they want to do something with their hands. They want to work on things that like use their whole brain. I do worry about the next wave of what restorers are going to have to do. Like, what do you do with 80s and 90s and 2000s cars? Not just cars that can be upgraded with software, because, learning to shape a metal panel is one thing.
Plastic molding.
And all the, not even electronics, like complicated electrical systems that everything wore out, or the screens that burned in your Datsun.
But see, I think you could find like an iPad type thing that would fit that. I worry about it's like the plastic molds.
Oh yeah,
that's like the.
Those will probably be 3D printed,
right.
That kind of thing. But I think there's going to be an opportunity. Kind of if you think at the educational level, which is something that we're thinking about. Do we need to be funding kind of the next phase of how do we train people to repair and fix
like the
new
generation?
the Radwood generation of cars that have a lot of plastic, and they had a lot of materials that are gone,
and they had a lot of weird tech.
Weird tech.
Maps loaded via CD.
My favorite of all time was, I think it was Nissan. Like, remember, like like the door is ajar. It was actually a record, that a miniature record player.
Probably, yeah.
If you can
find my Foghat 8-track.
Yeah, no. I mean, that noise was played off of a record.
Yeah.
There was 8 tracks on the record, and it would be like "Fasten Your Seatbelt" was a track, and it had a little mini arm that would go and play that.
They did what they had to do.
Yeah, but like, if it's a Concord car, so like you have
somebody's going to say
you have a Nissan like a R32Z that you got to put on the lawn. It's going to have that chime in the '94 model.
Yeah.
Just to summarize, McKeel is thinking about the distant future from a restoration perspective, which I think is wild. You're thinking about sort of the future in reverse. Like
I remember Gordon Murray, first time I met him, he said that the very first meeting with the design team for the F1, he said, we're going to envision a period of time 60 years from now. I remember it because he said 60, like why not 50, why not 75, sure. 60 years. Will the average restorer with an average set of skills be able to repair or restore this car? And that was his goal. It was like, apparently wrote it down. It had to be one of the design principles. And the second piece meant that it had to use commonly available materials and be able to be repaired or restored with tools that would be readily available, which meant no exotic materials and as minimal use of electronics as possible. And in the end, the only funky material in a MacLauren F1, like funky, is the gold foil defroster thing on the windshield, because it was like a...
but also the gold heat
shield
insulation in the engine bay. Also, it's carbon fiber.
Yeah, but
Kevlar.
But that would have not been... That's not that uncommon, because a common restorer would have been, like today, or like when I was growing up, would have worked in fiberglass. And, so like those things aren't too strange. And so that was his concern. I remember, I'm like, what are you worried about? His concern was, he said, okay, so compare... then it was just 10 years ago, probably. Compare a Porsche Turbo S with the Carrera GT. They're two fun cars to talk about. Right. Carrera GT, actually, there's very little, very complicated in it. It's just wickedly fast, just great astonishingly fast. Porsche Porsche Turbo S at the time had a lot more electronics, management, transmission management software, all this sort of thing. And so his point was just an interesting one. So I always try to think in the future and work backwards.
His point was actually really cocky, I think, if you think about it, because he's assuming at the design stage that his car is going to be super successful
Yeah.
and someone's going to care about it in 60
Yeah.
years
I
to the
don't think
point that
that's
they want
cocky. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing.
He knew he was something
I know,
special.
but that.
But no, it's a good it's a good
Incredible
point. I mean,
hubris.
and we're starting to see this. We're talking about this with like zonal architecture versus whatever. But like current Turbo S probably over 100 microchips. Like a 7 series, probably 180
Farley
microchips.
talks about lines of code, right? 150 million lines of code.
And
which will be
that's
simpler eventually.
Yeah, but
because it will be
yeah.
an AI.
Yeah.
AI, but also like zone architecture and Ethernet instead of having
Sure.
like we have wires for the
Lights.
cooling system and for the
Yeah.
windows and the lights,
Right.
all different wires. Like use the same wire,
Right.
So we will simplify, but that is a good point.
Yeah, so I just kind of think I felt like he kind of debunked his own theory just because, okay, look, a modern, your listener, if they sat there and said, oh, no problem figuring out how to reprogram a transmission from a 20-year-old car. I can do it on my laptop. In fact, I can download every file of every transmission ever built
Right.
and load it up into some module and make that car work. So,
Sure.
like, solved. Okay, Gordon, sorry, good idea. Thank you. You made it simpler. It's a manual transmission. Plastics, injection molded plastics, you'd say, okay, well, we'll 3D print
3D
them.
print that, yeah.
Exotic materials, you're right. Okay, gold foil on the windshield, like, that's pretty wild. That'd be super expensive or super, somebody would scratch their head or say, guess what? The windshield is not going to defrost. We're just not going to have this
Which
thing
might be
defrost,
okay.
Which might be just
okay.
fine 6 years from now. So I was kind of think, like, what do we need? What are we going to need to get there? And then will people be making cool stuff? And if people are making cool stuff, people will want them. And then people will collect them, and then we'll be there for them.
Okay.
good.
Last question.
Ah.
Last question.
I mean, I've been letting you
whatever you
read
want,
this
whatever you
because you got your laptop, but
Last question.
But
Okay, we talked.
I got a million.
Okay, well, my last question. We talked a little bit about it, but what is going to? You've done so much in 40 years. You took over as CEO 2012, and all of the stuff we've talked about is basically, I think, happened on your watch. What will your legacy be, or what do you want it to be?
Well, one, I want to,
And apologize because you're way too young for us to be talking about your legacy, but let's just talk about it.
No, thank you.
So-
Well, first, I believe in that mission of saving driving and car culture, which means doing a lot more than insurance. It means doing a lot of the things that we are. So I think, look, I think my next job is to make sure that there's a team ready to take it the next 40 years and to make it successful, because I really do worry, all of the kind of sky is falling talk. I think there's an answer. I think it's solvable for every single instance for people who really like cars and they want to drive on public roads, but not without a lot of money and not without a lot of people, an organization like ours or organizations like ours wanting to pull people together and to kind of around that common cause. So I got to build a team that can do that, a business that can help pay for it. And then a few things, look, we'll probably do, you got to keep doing media. You got to, the cool thing about we didn't talk about events much other than just kind of name some events. A really wild part of the car world is that people like to get together.
Yeah, right.
And
Stand on
it's
a
just
golf
like
course and look at cars,
or in a parking lot or
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
go for a drive. We are standing so near some of the best driving roads. There's just a lot of cars on them right now.
Yeah.
Is that people like to get together and drive, and so you got to do that stuff. And so we're going to build all the platforms and all the ways for people to have fun doing
Well,
it.
this is a leading last question. Then.
Sure.
But and so you look around and all this stuff. What's missing? What do you see that's missing that you're gonna in the near future or the far future? What are you looking to? Which gap are you looking to fill in the car world?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I like dealing with good people. I like, kind of the trust factors and all the stuff that we've done. I think there's a lot of things around the data around early cars that is going to need a lot of cleaning up and some of those things to make sure that, okay, if someday you really wanted to drive that Model T in LA, but you have to prove that it was really a 1915 Model T, somebody's got to be able to prove that that is kind of what it is. So, like, those are some of the things I think about. 50 years from now, what's it going to take for your buddy to drive his Model T in LA? So some of that's going to be data. Some of it's going to be maybe better government relations, some of those types of things, like not sexy, but it's going to have to be done.
Right.
a lot of these skills and trades things to carry it forward. Like, do we need different schools? Should we be funding some shop classes again? Like I grew up in an era when, young people used to be able to go to shop class. It was kind of, you either chose shop or home ec when I was going through it, or band. I kind of did band, so we'll skip that because I was working on cars at home. What do we need to fund to get that happening? Right. The good news, like about the data though, like when people say the sky's falling and young people don't like cars, it's like, yeah, they do.
Oh, some really
They
do.
absolutely do. They're just they learn about them differently, right? You mentioned Car and Driver. We've 75th anniversary of MotorTrend. Like this is we have been in this amazing era of automotive media. The game universe is a really important part of how the next gen is listening to cars. So or learning about cars. So you think of Forza, Gran Turismo. They're super important for our future,
right?
So we gotta have them. We need them. We need to sport them, and we need to.
So Hagerty, the video game, is what.
Well,
I'm
no, and you literally just and now I got to ask another question because it's on here and I forgot to ask you. You were in Gran Turismo 7.
Yeah.
You were in there.
I'm an avatar or whatever.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. You're describing cars that you can.
I'm like the mayor of the historic car garage in there. So I get like when people earn enough credits, they can buy historic cars, and I explain what they are and what they would be worth, and it's pretty cool.
You notice the theme here. He's always at the whipped cream end of the car space, even in a video game.
I was in Forza 7.
I shot the I think I shot the original game. I shot one of the original game covers for one of those 20 years ago. I just went through I looked through my photos and
you found it.
They're terrible. But
I mean, you've come a long way.
I've come a long way.
Yes.
All right, I do have one last question that came up while you were talking, and this one you may not be able to or want to answer this one.
Oh.
The baby boom generation is set to retire or
has retired.
Has retired.
Expired might be the word.
Pass on the greatest wealth transfer in generations. What about their cars? Are we going to see the bottom fall out for a lot of that era of vehicles, which I think powered, I think if you want to consider it, the first generation of like the auction scene, like the Barrett Jackson auctions that we've been living through for 20 years, right? Like I keep seeing all these hot rods cross the stage, and I'm just going, are we at the peak? Are we past the peak? Like how do you see that era of vehicles? Because you're now dealing with you moved on to Radwood.
If I may, but before you answer, to add on to that, pre-war stuff that's big value. Like when we saw each other on the Mercedes rally, those are $25 million cars to who type thing.
I think those still stay relevant.
I'm
talking about this huge blister caused by
no, but we always talk about this. Like there's been. If you discount the first couple of years at Pebble Beach, there's been one post-war car on the lawn, and that one best of show. It was a '53 Ferrari. That was a weird body, blah blah.
Yep. Really weird body.
And really weird body. Thank you. And so like, when does this? What he's saying, but also like when does that is that going to change? Does it have to change?
Well, look. They have to be aspirational. People have to be able to see them. People have to have money to buy them. So, like, it's all kind of that. When we looked at that data, for example, in the late teens, when everybody said, "Oh my gosh, it's over. Young people don't want cars. They're getting their driver's license later." It's like, now a lot of that data is actually right after the financial crisis of 08, 09, and there were a lot of fresh out of college people who were having trouble finding jobs.
Yeah.
So they're certainly not buying Ferraris for Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
But that was 08, 09. So maybe they're close to a Ferrari for Pebble Beach.
Right.
Now, some of them. And it doesn't take everybody. It just takes a passionate few. And it's always been that way. The car world's always been that way. And I'm not a big art world person, but probably the art world is the same way.
You know all the collectors.
World.
And I don't know wine, but I know bourbon. I know all the bourbon collectors.
There you go. The Pappy's, isn't for everybody because it's super expensive, but you want somebody to want it.
And bourbon collectors would never touch Pappy. But go ahead.
Oh my goodness. I'm learning it.
Some Pappy.
This is the artisanal cheese of the bourbon world.
If it's the Pappy distilled at Stitzel Weller, yes.
Right,
if it's distilled at Buffalo Trace, no.
The point is, it's got to be aspirational. There has to be, an economy that values things like this. Like if it's, the only way you can ever get in a transportation environment is it's some publicly owned vehicle. Like, no, that would be very, very different. So to me, it's true. The baby boomer generation, they're aging. They were the largest car collecting generation. But my father was the generation older, and they were a big car collecting generation. I think what you're going to see is not the bottom falling out, but you are going to see some great buys. And so it's a chance like anything else. It's going to be a great, for those people who like them. It's not for everybody. Is there going to be some great buys coming out, and we'll see how this all works out. And if it's, if as long as these generations keep getting bigger, which is an interesting, if you think about it, the millennials were the children of baby boomers, and it's two huge generations. I was kind of sandwiched in the middle as a Gen Xer. Big generations. If they can do these things, I think the cars will be aspirational. People will want them. So I don't have a sky is fall. I don't want to have sort of rose-colored glasses either. But I think there's reason to be optimistic. And if we kind of work at it, if we like it, they'll be there.
Okay.
So
that's a great way.
Yeah. On that note.
To end.
It's not inevitable, but it's almost inevitable. Yes.
Nearly inevitable.
Almost
inevitable. The new podcast.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable.
Well, McKeel Hagerty,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We did run out of time before we ran out of topics, but we'll have to have you back on for the next big anniversary or sooner. But thank you.
Yeah, let's not make it the 100th.
No.
Yes, we'll make it.
We won't be here.
Yeah, that's right. But the air conditioning will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hey.
Yes, all right.
Thank you.
The Inevitable Vodcast, brought to you by the all-electric Nissan Ariya. Inspired by the future, designed for the now.